All right. So we are live if you are on. And if you can let me know you can hear me, if you can, and I've gotten feedback here. So hold on. Feedback here. I'm going to turn the mic on. Can you hear me now? It looks like you can hear me. I'm seeing some movement in my voice. Okay. Thank you so much. I can't stand technology. Let me start over. So, welcome to the last Saturday of 2023. The years go so quickly as I get older. I don't know why. Um, I'm really excited for 2024. I've created a business plan. I've created an entire list of everything that I want to accomplish. And I'm really, really excited to get started. And I have a busy year ahead of me. And I want to share that with you. So I might continue to do these lives. Not probably not every Saturday. We'll see. We'll see how that works. And if people want to listen and watch me paint or listen to me share ideas and techniques and tips, that would be great. So today, what I wanted to go over, I wanted to share with you an app that I use on my iPad that is extremely helpful. I also wanted to share with you, I got a question from a student saying, talking about acrylic versus oil. And I see that question a lot online. I'm also participating in Let's Face It, and I see people asking that question. I work in acrylic, but the class is taught in oil. Can I still do it? So I wanted to talk about that as well. And I wanted to share with you, since, how I reapproach a painting after I haven't, looked at it for a while. And how I go about evaluating and comparing and seeing where I need to make adjustments. And this is kind of will be similar to my workshop that starts January 7th. And I mentioned in the workshop, there are, when you sign up for the workshop, you get two opportunities. I have two live Zoom calls within the workshop where I will provide um, feedback, guidance, critique, whatever you need to help you if you have any questions about what you're working on. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the project that we're working on that month. It could be something else that you're working on and you're trying to finish and you need to problem solve. So it is open to, whatever project you are working on. It could be something you're working on in another class or Let's Face It or Lifebook or whatever, and you have questions and you need some feedback and guidance, which is really great. And I'm going to do that twice in the month throughout the workshop. But what I wanted to show you is kind of a summary of how I would provide that guidance to you, kind of looking at your work and helping you see and helping you understand how to solve your problems when you're faced with it at the easel, right? It's one thing you take a class or you follow an online class and you see the artists and they're just like whipping it up and everything's perfect to you, maybe. But then you get to your easel and then you start working on it and you're following. And then all of a sudden it's like, why isn't this working? Why isn't it working so simply and flowy and easily as the instructor did in their class? Why am I struggling? There's a lot of issues. There's a lot of reasons why you're probably struggling. And sometimes you just need a third eye or someone else to just say, hey, this is, maybe you should try it this way, or this is why you're struggling with that. And sometimes you need that. So that's what those live Zoom calls are all about. And I think that is what's really beneficial when taking a workshop, is getting feedback and guidance and support from the instructor. Okay, so first thing, I wanted to answer the question. So I had a student email me and ask me, she signed up for the workshop and I'll be doing the demo in oil. And she says, well, I'm a mixed media. I work in acrylic. Can I still do the clash, or should I use oil, or should I stay with acrylic? What should I do? And I've seen similar questions on different Facebook groups. I usually work in acrylic. That's all I have. Do I need to go out and buy all new paint, oil paint, and figure it out? Or can I just do the class in acrylic? So, answer to that question. Acrylic and oil are two great mediums, and I use them interchangeably. I do use them both sometimes. And I'm just going to share with you what I like about acrylic and what I love about oil, and how you can use them both, or how you can, kind of understand how to get acrylics to be like oil. Okay. And this is just my opinion. It's a matter of preference, really. And there are some artists that have mastered acrylic, and there's artists that have mastered oil, and they go to the other medium and it's like they can't do it. So I do a lot of mixed media art. I started using acrylic when I started painting. And I found that it's a little bit more inexpensive, somewhat. It doesn't have a lot of the fumes. I find that a lot of oil paint has a lot of fumes that bother me, and a lot of solvents that I don't want to deal with. So when I first started creating in the beginning, I used acrylic because it was just easier and it felt safer, I guess. And it's easy to clean up with water and whatever. It was easy clean up, and you can paint and go and whatever. But I found a few struggles. with working in acrylic, especially working with portrait painting. What I like about acrylic is if you're doing mixed media, it is golden. You could do so much. You can play with your hands, you can do collage, you can use all these kind of acrylic mediums to create texture and flow, and you can have so much fun with acrylic. But what I struggled with is blending. I wanted to achieve a more realistic kind of skin tone. I wanted to be a little bit more realistic, and I felt that acrylic um, gave me this almost plasticky kind of feel to it, which it is kind of plastic. Um, and I just didn't like it. And I struggled with blending. It took a lot. It was a lot of fighting to blend my colors together to get a smooth blended look of skin tone, a more realistic look of skin tone. And I've eventually kind of figured out how to achieve that, but it took a lot of frustration, a lot of tears, a lot of, getting upset. Um, but it is doable. It is achievable. It just takes a lot of practice and technique, and there's a certain way to really achieve that perfectly blended, flowy look that you get from oils. And acrylic dries so fast. And if you live in like a really hot or humid or dry climate, as soon as you put the acrylic on the canvas, boop, it is dry in 2 seconds. If you mix something on your palette, it's dry, and you got to continuously mix and remix and use up paint and so forth. So those things really kind of, I just didn't like it. So I really wanted to transition into oil. And because I wanted the paint to last longer, I wanted that blended, smooth, flowy, that feel, that buttery feel. And so I started with oils, but I still struggled with it because oils don't dry as fast. So you're basically piling paint on top of each other, trying to get to what you're trying to get the form and shape and trying to get to where you want to be. And it can have a tendency to get muddy, right? And you're sitting there trying to lighten it, and it's starting just getting muddier and muddier because the paint is wet and you're just piling more paint on top of wet paint and it's blending in with each other and you've got mud, right? And you've lost the vibrancy that sometimes acrylics give you. I find acrylics to be really vibrant and bright. So there's pros and cons to both. And so I had to teach myself and slowly learn how to achieve what I wanted with oils. And that came by watching other artists and learning and so forth. So I like to teach in oil, but I'm also open to helping students learn acrylic. So I wanted to share with you a couple of tips on how to achieve um, a somewhat similar type of look that you get in oils with acrylic. Hope I said that right. All right. So I will usually with acrylic, some people use that. I don't have, it's all the way over there, but they have that palette that covers, and you can put water, you can dampen the bottom of it to keep the palette damp. Some people use that, and I completely forgot the name of it. So if you know the name of it and you want to put it in the comments, please, because it's totally, I have it, I'm staring at it right now, but that's a great way to keep your acrylics damp on your palette, especially if you're in a really dry climate where it's going to dry really quickly. Um, so that's one thing. A stay wet palette. I think that's the name of it. I think. Um, so also a great way to keep acrylics still kind of workable and I'm not going to say wet because that palette keeps things kind of wet. It keeps it damp. But I'm going to use the word tacky. It there's mediums that you can use to keep the acrylic more workable. Thank you. I was right. Stay Wet palette. Thank you so much. So I like to use acrylic glazing medium. Now there's other mediums. Other brands have other mediums like a slow drying medium. There's a ton of them. I haven't used those. I've only used acrylic glazing medium. And I think you can buy it in like gloss. You can buy it in like a satin or matte. I think I use the satin, and I don't think I have it in front of me. Um, and I use that. So I'll squirt a little bit of that in either on my palette or in a little kind of cup. And I will dip into that when I'm mixing a color, and that will, it will allow the paint will not dry as quickly, and it will kind of retain this kind of tackiness so that you can work it a little bit longer, like oil. Not as long as oil, but it gives you a little bit more time to do your business and do what you need to do. So I like the Stay Wet palette. Me personally, I don't like putting the water underneath. I will just put as much acrylic that I need for that sitting so I don't waste paint. But I like using it because you can cover it and put it away, and it doesn't create mess. But acrylic glazing medium helps the acrylic paint stay alive a little bit longer. I've also used by Golden, it's called Open Acrylics, and they have a whole line, all the colors. That's another way it's not, and there's other brands I've tried, but Open is probably the better one. It retains a certain tackiness, kind of like the acrylic glazing medium. So it stays alive a little bit longer so that you have time to go in and do some blending, right, between values. So that's Open Acrylics. It's made by Golden. They have pretty much all this, not all of them, but the basic colors that Golden has. There are other brands. I'll list them in the, if I can find them, I'll list them. I don't like them that much because they're just inconsistent in their makeup. They sometimes when I've ordered them, they've come really clumpy, like kind of jelly like, and just not really happy. But Open Acrylics have worked well. They're a little different. They take a little, you have to get used to them, but sometimes you can use, right? You can use both the open and the regular acrylic to work a portrait. Another thing that I do is if I am working on a portrait and I'm doing acrylic, I will focus on small areas. So I will focus here, right? And I will just focus. I won't. I'll close my eyes to the rest of the face, and I'll just focus in one small area. And I will literally on my palette, I will mix my light, my mid-tone, and my dark. So I'll have three values sitting there, and I will work that area really quickly. So the name of the game is just speed. It's how long can you get that paint to work for you. If you can get it to work a little bit longer by putting some acrylic glazing medium or using the open acrylics, and you can just kind of work your way through those three values to get it a little bit more blended. And uh and you hated acrylic. I don't hate acrylic. I do love it when it comes to mixed media. But when I'm painting portraits, I don't love it. However, so let me just go back to section. So I resolve that section, I move on to the next. I resolve that section, I move on to the next. And then sometimes I will take some just plain acrylic glazing medium, and I will as it dries, I will just kind of glaze a little bit of the just plain acrylic glazing medium over an area to get it to work a little bit longer. So those are my little tricks. There's not a lot of tricks, but it's working quickly and knowing actually what to do. And so it's working quickly. It's using a medium that helps the acrylic stay alive, tacky a little bit longer, and then just kind of working in sections. Another thing with acrylic is there's two things I'll do. If I'm working on skin tone, I will use a limited palette of 3 or 4, 5 max colors. That's it. And I have a video that in one of my Fantastic Faces classes where we work on the Zorn palette. And the Zorn palette is a limited palette. Let me see if I can name the colors: titanium white, cadmium yellow, cadmium red, and ivory black. That's it. And you can get a wide range of skin tone just by using those 4 colors. I know the black can throw you off, but it works. So when you're using a limited palette with acrylic, you can make decisions a lot quicker. So you can mix the skin tone that you need, your light, your dark, and your mid-tone, a lot quicker so that you have more time to play on here. So um, I will use a limited palette for my skin tone. Now, what about all the other colors? Sometimes I'll just work right out the tube. Um, and there's certain brands like Golden has beautiful colors that right out the tube, they're perfect. Not so much with skin tone colors, but like the quinacridones and the green golds and so forth. I just work right out the tube and that maintains the vibrancy and I can work a lot quicker. I will usually do that when I'm doing landscapes and I'm working in plein air. I will basically get all the tube colors that I want. I know that's probably a no-no, but it's a great way to work quicker because you don't want the paint to dry. You want to give yourself enough time to do what you need to do, blend what you need before it dries, right? That's the objective. So, um, here's another thing I do. If you are, oils can take there's a learning curve with, especially if you've been working in acrylic for a long time, but you want to try oil too. Um, Sometimes I will do my entire underpainting because I feel more comfortable. Um, or you may feel more comfortable playing with acrylic here. I will do my entire underpainting using acrylic, same colors that I use. This was burnt sienna, and then I did a little bit of the titanium white here. And I will work this in acrylic. And because it dries faster, I can get it done a lot quicker. And I don't have to wait for the underpainting to dry. And I can get flowy. I can move, I can adjust, I can fix a little bit easier with the acrylic and not have to wait for it to dry. And then I will finish it off with oil. That's another way to start incorporating and learning how oils work. If you're more comfortable with acrylic, but you don't want to make the huge transition to just oil, you can slowly transition from acrylic to oil. So you can do acrylic and then put oil on top, but you can't do oil and put acrylic on top. So you can't go the other way around. So you can build up your underpainting with acrylic paint. You can play as long as you need to. And then you can go in when you're ready to do the finishing touches in oil. Great way to learn and get a good understanding of oil paint. So my answer to people that ask, can I do your class? If you're demoing in oil and I want to use acrylic, my answer is a big fat yes. And if you're struggling, you have the guidance. You can definitely ask questions in the live Zoom call of my workshop of wow, I'm not getting that same look as you are. How, can you give me some advice on how I can get there with using acrylic? So that's my answer. Let's see. Let's see if I have any. When I first started, did I use heavy amounts of paint? Um, that's a technique some artists do. When I first started, I was a little nervous. I was the artist when I first started painting. I was the artist, and I still do. I still do. Little bit of paint on my brush, little bit. I was always scared to slap paint on my canvas. Um, so I still am. I'm a conservative. I don't like to waste paint, and I don't like to have a ton of paint slapped on my canvas. One, it takes longer to dry, and I don't know. I tend to get a little bit more muddier based on my way of doing things. But there are some artists that are really good with putting a lot of paint on their brush and working it. I am a scaredy cat. I was always a scaredy cat. And, for me to even blob a huge blob of paint on my palette, I'm always scared. I feel like I'm just going to waste it. So, very conservative when it comes to paint on my brush. Um, let's see. And thank you, TMAR57. Yes, open acrylics, yes, is a good. However, I will tell you about open acrylics. I don't love it. It's actually, I feel, and I'd be curious if anyone else feels this way, if that has used it. I feel that the open acrylics compared to the heavy body acrylic of Golden, the open acrylics is almost a little bit more transparent. Some of the opaque colors, like titanium white, are a little like, I don't want to say watery, but they're a little transparent in the open acrylic. So that threw me off a bit. I don't know if it's just me thinking that. I just find that I have to use more paint when I'm working in the open acrylics. I don't love doing it. Um, so it takes some getting used to. I kind of like the heavy body acrylics by Golden. And I don't usually use those fluid acrylics. I will with backgrounds and mixed media, but if I'm using acrylic and I'm doing skin tone, I'm doing a face, I much prefer the heavy body acrylics than the Golden in the bottle, the high flow, the fluid acrylics. It's my preference. I like using the fluid acrylics to glaze and to drip and to just kind of move paint around. But when I'm painting skin tone, I like that heavier body of paint. It's a little bit more easier for me to manipulate. Any more questions? Do I frown upon dollar store paints? Yes. So let's talk about cheap versus expensive paint. Yeah, I frown upon the lesser expensive, the cheaper paints and supplies. Why is that? Because I feel like it's kind of like the cheaper the paint, the less pigment is being used, right? So you've got this tube of paint here. And the more expensive paint, acrylic and oil, both, will have a lot more pigment in it. And then the less expensive, I hope I said that, the more expensive paint will have a lot more pigment, less filler, right? It's kind of like food, right? The more processed food and less expensive food is filled with a lot of fillers rather than the nutrient, the actual food, right? So I can't think of food any particular type of food, but and right, and that's how they can extend the life, and they can create more food because they put a lot of fillers in it. But it's not doesn't the more fillers that are in food, the less nutritional, right? The net less healthier it is. So with paint, acrylic and oil, I feel like the more expensive paint has more pigment, more of the color in it, less filler. So acrylic, I'm not entirely sure of the chemical makeup of paint, but I feel like a cheaper acrylic paint um, isn't as opaque. You end up using more of the cheaper paint. So are you really saving money? Same with oil. Oil paint, more expensive oil paint is has a lot more pigment in it, less expensive. The student grade oil paint has a lot of like fillers, like the oils in it. So there's less pigment. It takes more paint to get to, paint on your painting. So you're actually using more paint. And are you really saving money in the end? Because now you're literally going through a lot of the cheaper paint, and I can take like not the zinc white, but like a alizarin crimson of my oil paint, and I can just use a tiny little bit, and that could last me for a very long time on a painting. So that's why I frown. However, if that's all you can afford, or if that's your budget, go ahead. I mean, I personally frown upon it because I feel like you end up spending more money in the long run. And you'll get a better result if you just spend just a touch more on paint. Um, Another thing about dollar store acrylic paint is it's probably more in line with craft paint. And craft paint is more in line with what I think like gouache is, which it's a little bit more like poster paint that you used in school. And it's it comes off really matte and chalky, and it doesn't blend well. So those are my issues with less expensive paint. But here's some ideas. Here's some lesser expensive paint that I actually like. Dick Blick, which is they have stores throughout the United States. I don't know about internationally, but they also have an online. Their Here's their oil paint. Their Blick Studio, and they also have their own. This is oil paint. This is a lesser of their oil paint line called Blick Studio. But their brand of oil and acrylic paint are actually very good. They're less expensive than Golden, and I feel that for the price, sometimes a little inconsistencies with acrylic, but I think they do really well. Another brand is called Utrex. They used to have a store in New York City. I don't know, but they've kind of uh, blended in with, I think, Dick Blick. I think they're also, I think their acrylic and oil paint line is less expensive than the Goldens, the Gamblins, the Old Holland oil paint, and so they're a little less expensive, and I think they do really really well. So those are some brands that I like. Amsterdam acrylics. I don't know if they do oil, but they're another less expensive brand of acrylic paint that, I mean, do really well. I mean, I think they're fine. So you don't have to buy the golden. You gotta like take a year's salary to write just to get enough to get paint. Um, Golden isn't always perfect, and there are other brands that are just as good. So I would stay away from the cheap paint, but there are other brands, and I'll try to do some research in the replay of this. some brands that especially acrylic brands that I actually kind of like that are that are less expensive than the golden and the Liquitex because those are expensive, and I don't always have the money. um, but if you don't have the money, it's perfectly fine. Use what you can, and you'll learn how to use it. So I think if I have any other questions about acrylic and the oil paint, you can definitely use acrylic paint if the teacher is painting in oil. You may not get all the same techniques and you may have to adjust and shift in certain ways, but it is doable. You can. Now, you probably, if you're a watercolor artist and you want to use watercolor and somebody's teaching in oil, you might struggle a bit, as I would, because I struggle with acrylic. It can be a little, it's a whole different kind of animal for me. Okay, so I wanted to, I want to get everything in, but I wanted to share this app with you as well because it's really, really cool. And here's my iPad here. I use an iPad. And I have my little pen. I use this. This is like a huge help for me when I'm painting. And you can see there's paint all over my screen, but I put like a screen protector. So note to artists, if you use technology while you're painting, like a laptop, a phone, an iPad, invest in a screen protector. So if you get paint on it, you can just kind of pull it off, because once you get paint on the screen, you can't get it off. But I wanted to share this app. It's called, and I'll put it in the comments, I'll put it in the description of the replay. It's called Head Model Studio. It is available for my iPad or Apple. I'm not sure if it's available with Android or the other phone things. So this is what it does. This is like really, really cool. And I'm gonna intensity. Here we go. And hopefully um oh, sorry. Oh man. Okay. So take a look. I'm trying to get it to the sun, right? So that's a face, right? If you can see it, and take a look at that, right? So look at what you can do. So basically what this app does is it's like a model that you can work off. Remember in last week's live, I talked about where to get reference photos. Well, what if you can't get reference photos and you just want to practice how to draw a face and understand? You'll hear me talk about it a lot when I'm painting the planes and the form and shape of a face. And so this is a great app because you can move it into different profiles. You can adjust the lighting, right? Wait a minute. I can adjust the, oh God. I'm sitting here I can adjust like where the lighting is. I can adjust where the light is hitting. I can change the model. I can do like a simple, if you can see that there, I can move it around. I can do a more female looking head. I'm trying to say that you can see here. Ooh, really cool. I always talk about this a lot. It's really important to understand the skeletal structure of the face, to understand all the forms and the all the hills and valleys of the face, right? So this is really helpful. There are some free, like it's initially free, but if you want, like you can basically customize the model. You can make the nose bigger, you can make the eyes smaller, you can do all these customization things on it. And that you have to pay for. and I forget how much I paid for it. But there are a lot of just kind of free things here, and it's really, really helpful. What it also has are they have little practice things. So you can do little practice sessions here with drawing the face. And I think they time it, and look, they give you like, look at that. It is so helpful to understand. I think it's a great tool to like now I can't because I put in a here. I think it's a great tool to understand the shape of a face. I think this is a really great tool. Um, Also, when I was starting out, I used to do a lot of cast drawing to, just focus on, you can just focus on the nose. Look at that. You can change the nose. You can like customize it, make it bigger, make it smaller. So you can see just kind of the makeup of the nose. Let me do, no, do another one here. You can do the eye, and you can just kind of focus on the eye area. And you can move it around in different angles, right? So you can practice. Great, great app. I wanted to share that with you. I think it's called Head Model Studio. And I don't know, I will check. I'll go to their website. I'll see if they have a website, and I'll see where else they're available. I really don't know. I have an iPad. I am tethered to Apple, unfortunately. So that's all I have. But it's available. It is good. Awesome. Um, and who went to Blick? Oh, here I have a question. Do I ever use ink? I do. I use acrylic ink all the time, especially if I want to get a nice thin line. Instead of watering down my paint, I will use acrylic ink, or I will use like the fluid acrylics, because it using the ink, instead of adding water to your brush, you maintain that vibrancy of the color that you're using. And if you add water to it, you just water it down and you lose the vibrancy. So yes, I do use acrylic ink. Okay. So I just wanted to share that with you. If you are looking to take your portrait painting skills to the next level, that app, you can use it as a reference photo. You can, if you like to make up faces, it's a great app. It's a great tool to help you. All right. So what I wanted to do, and I can talk a lot, but I felt like those were really important things to kind of go over. But what I wanted to do, I haven't I haven't touched this since after I got off the last live I had. Um I did a little bit more work, but I haven't touched this since then. And I will do that. I will give my painting space. Sometimes you need to give it space. So, a few things that I might do when I return to my painting, I might, turn it upside down. Sometimes when you turn it upside down, you see things, it looks awkward, but it kind of tricks your mind and you start seeing. And sometimes if I'm struggling with an area, I might work at it upside down. I might do that. But what I like to do is I take a picture of where I am now, and then I line it up. I use like an app. You ask, how many projects do I have going on at once? Most of the time it's just one. But now, since I have a show coming up in March, I've got like 5 going on right now. But most of the time, I work one at a time. Just that's my mind can only handle one thing at a time. But because I've got to get stuff done, they're all in different, either they're here or they're close to being done or they're in the drawing phase. All right, back to this. So what I do is I take a photo Usually I have this on my iPad, but the brightness is just it's makes it difficult to see. So I will take a photo, and then I will basically take a photo and kind of line it up with the reference photo. So if you're taking my workshop in January, this is what I would do. You would provide me with a photo of what you're working on, and then I would line it up with the reference photo to see, so we can kind of talk about what we need to work on, or what you would like to work on, or what you're struggling with. So I will take a look, and I'll start noticing things of, where do I need to go? So I'm going to, because I want to see the whole thing. I'm going to put up the photo here. And where'd my tape go? Okay. And there's a few things now that I'm looking at it that I'm like, I need to adjust. A few little adjustments I need to make. So I'm going to talk about that. And these are things that I need to work on. And I'll have like a little notebook sitting right here, and I'll make notes of things that I need to work on before I start getting into all the goodness of putting paint in there. And if I don't stop to notice the adjustments and kind of fix them now, I'm going to be dealing with it later on in the painting, and then I'm not going to be happy with. So what I'm noticing, I'm going to go down here. I noticed that her chin, and so my goal, my intention here is I would like to I like what's happening here, but I would like to get it slightly a little bit more to look like Alicia. I'd like to get her likeness a little bit more. But I like the expression. I like what's happening, but I do want to get it a little bit closer. So this is what I'm noticing. I see that the chin here, when I look at this, it's a lot shorter, and mine is really long. So I'm noticing here that I need to bring, I'm not going to move this. That's too much work. I'm going to bring the neck in a little bit out, not in. I'm going to bring the neck out a little bit more so that it is more in line with what's happening here. Another thing I noticed what happened is her jawline is kind of it's going up, right? And in hers, I noticed that it is more straight. So maybe I may not have to make any adjustments if I bring this out, but I need to get this a little bit more straighter so that it's more in likeness with my friend Alicia. So those are things that, this is definitely an area. I think the ear is okay right now. I think the ear is okay right now, but I won't know until I adjust here. Some other things that I'm noticing, the mouth looks okay. Sometimes I'll go in and I'll just kind of measure the edge of the mouth and see where it ends up with the eye, and then I'll go in. Not bad, not bad. So mouth is okay for now. But what I notice right here is that, let me see if I can get the camera a little closer. So I feel like if I adjust this camera, everything's gonna go wrong here. So I'm gonna leave it. But I notice here the area right here is kind of curving a little too much, but I'm gonna leave it because I kind of like it here. And maybe if I make all the other adjustments, this will be okay. So there's certain things that I'm like, I'm okay with. I'll leave. Is the nose, what I'm noticing is just like the chin, the nose is a little straighter. I think I need to, this area right here, I need to straighten. So I need right there. I notice that it's coming up just a little too much. So I need to just kind of straighten this, bring this down a little bit so that it's straighter. And I need to kind of look at the size of the nose. But I'll leave it. I like where it is right now. Now, another thing that I'm noticing is right here. Let me move this over here. So the nose, this area right here. Let me move. Actually, let me get another photo so I can put it up. I've got the black and white here. Right. So what I'm noticing is right here, that's hard to see. Actually, let me do this photo. So I want to get up close. So what I notice here is that in her nose, it comes out, but it goes in a little bit. It's hard to see because that light. But when you look at mine, it just kind of it goes straight down. There's no little dip right in there. It's just going straight down. So what I need to do is I need to kind of make some adjustments. And there's a few things that I need to do. So right in this area here, I need to kind of take a look at the angle that's happening right in this nose. I'm looking at that shadow shape. And I'm going to take a look at that shadow shape, and maybe I think I need to kind of bring it in a little bit more and then bring this in a little bit more so that it's more at an angle. And then right where this eye that is kind of peeking in the side there, I notice there's definitely an angle, and I need to kind of bring that down a bit more. So, because right now what it's looking like is it looks like this eye is a little too far out this way. And instead of me thinking, okay, I need to move this eye all the way here, I'm thinking this is where the problem is. This is where it is. So I need to solve this problem before I start thinking about the eye. So I'm not even going to look at the eye right now. I'm going to solve this. This needs to be adjusted. I need to push this in, divot that in a little bit, and then adjust the shape of this shadow shape here a bit. I think it's not at the angle that it should be. And then looking here, I noticed that the forehead is a little straighter. And then my forehead is just kind of it's sloping that way. So I need to straighten this forehead to go up a bit. So I need to look at that shape. So a lot of times what I like to do, let me get my black and white photo here. Another thing I like to do in my tape here, I'm just going to put this up in front. And I have just a little Sharpie. I'll print out like a black and white, and I will just kind of outline that shape, so that I can see it, right? I'll just outline what I need to do. So I did that. I'll put it up. I don't know if you can see it, but I basically outlined that shape. So this is what I need to look at this and kind of get it closer, kind of get that on there. But sometimes it's really helpful. Another thing I notice is this light shape here. Oh, it's so hard to see. The photo is this light shape here. I have it's just kind of like more like a rectangle. So I need to shape this a little bit more. And that might give me enough information to get it to more of her likeness. Again, I'll take a look. I like to outline, I'll outline this light shape here and just compare it with, just outline the cheek. Let's see if I can get it so you can see it. Um, and just kind of get it, use it as a guide to help me see. So that's how I kind of will compare. Occasionally, I will use my iPad and I'll have this on my iPad, and then I will use my little nifty Apple pen to kind of show, get a ruler out and just kind of show how far I'm off. And this happens, especially when I don't, when I kind of paint or sketch right onto the canvas. I'm already like waiting, like it's not going to be perfect. I'm going to make mistakes. Some things are going to be off, and that's okay because I'm still in this developmental stage. I'm not focusing on any type of detail. I'm still working on developing the shape and form of her face and getting it closer to the liking. And then I can make decisions whether I'm like, okay, but I like what's happening with the mouth. I don't want to change it. I like what's happening, or I like what's happening here. As long as it's proportionately right, like as long as we don't have an eye all the way over here or down there, or the nose is way off. As long as you're following the proportions of the face, we don't need to stay here. We don't need to copy this completely, and so forth. So those are um, those are just great ways to see. Because if you've ever painted a portrait and you start painting and you got it right, like it is like you're just kind of drawing it and you're like, this looks good, and then all of a sudden you step back and you look at it and you're like, wait a minute, where was I off? That's not what I saw. And the eyes all the way up there, and it's all disproportionate, and it's all like, and you're like, what was I seeing? Why am I seeing that? And then I do this, because I'm going to admit I do this. I go back and I start trying to adjust, but I still can't get it right because my brain is not formulating what it's supposed to be. So sometimes when we are drawing and painting, our brain wants to think for us. I know that sounds weird. And we need to condition our brain to see differently. Um, because our brain already has it already has an idea of what something is supposed to look like a tree. When we look at a tree, our brain, using memory and just using whatever information it's getting, has in its mind what a tree is supposed to look like. So when you go and you physically want to go draw a tree, your brain is going to take up all that information that it's gathered throughout the years, and it's going to create a tree for you. But it's that tree ends up not looking like what you are drawing or what you see in front of you, because your brain is thinking for you. And I know that sounds weird, but our brains sometimes don't give us the right information, and we need to condition our brain to see differently when we are painting as an artist and creator. It's another reason why you'll see artists start using colors and you're like, but I don't see that. I don't see that color. Well, they see it because they've conditioned their brain to not follow the norm. I hope that makes sense, but that's the reason why a lot of times you start painting and you paint something and it feels right, like you think it's right, and then you step back and you're like, whoa, it's not right. Why? And you try to fix it and it doesn't, because your brain isn't it's not formulating what it really needs to see. Let's see. Do I ever use grids? I think grids are very really, really helpful. However, I am a spaz when it comes to measuring or getting things like exact. So I end up getting crazy anxiety, right? I will put I'll print out the photo in the grid, right? And then I've got to make sure that the grid is exactly the same of what the grid is from the reference photo, and I'm already like, forget it. So because if the grid on your canvas is off from what you're it's so no, I don't use grids. I think they're very helpful if you can get past the anxiety that I get. I think they're really helpful in seeing and helping you see, but I don't. I like to kind of use the site, and I just like to practice this way and then go on and just kind of compare and contrast along the way. That's what I like. And if all else fails and you have a commission and you want to get it to look exactly, bring out the projector and trace it. Really, it's if that's what you need to do to get there. Whatever you need to do to get there so that you don't feel anxiety or any pressure in moving forward. I feel no rules. You do what makes you feel comfortable. That is how I feel about anything. But grids are helpful. I'm just not great at creating the grids unless they sell canvases that already have grids already on it. I'm just not going to do it. So any more questions? You asked me, what do I do for a living? This is what I do for a living. I paint full time. I worked in finance for 20 years and then had enough and decided that I wanted to paint full time. So this is what I do for a living. I'm not rich by any means, but I do like to share and I do like to teach and I do like to paint all day. So that's what I do for a living. Any other questions? That we have. I didn't get to paint, but I did help give you a lot of information. So what I just demonstrated just now would be similar to the guidance and support that I would provide in my workshop to each student. So I just wanted to share that with you. So if you are interested in signing up for my workshop, it starts January 7th. I'll put a link in the replay. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to be doing the same thing. I'll probably go live again, maybe if you're interested in being on here and listening to me provide tips and techniques. If it's helpful, I'll keep going live. That would be great. So I'm going to sign off because I've got some prep to do for New Year's Eve. I know it's not New Year's Eve yet, but I've got some cooking I need to prep for. And I will see you at some point. Definitely follow my email. Make sure I have your email so you can get the next invite for my next live. And if you're interested, definitely check out my workshop for January. So happy New Year to everyone. And and let's have an amazing 2024. Let's create more, play more, practice more, and be amazing creators that we are. All right. So I'll see you guys later. The replay will be here in a matter of minutes here if you need to watch it again. Happy New Year.